he was part of the same Beatles, right? And listen, no disrespect to the Beatles, and I can't take away from their contribution to music, right? But he was part of the same Beatles that got famous covering a lot of our greats. Testing 1 2 3. What's up with the what's up, folks? Welcome back to the Opinion Humans platform. I'm your host, True Victor, and we are back with another one. Okay, for those that do, follow and support the platform, you know that I am a huge music connoisseur. All right, so one of the biggest people who I've been a huge supporter of, actually, over the decades is Michael Jackson. All right, the king of pop, the king of entertainment, I would say. And sometimes I'll end up down these somewhat rabbit holes, right? And I've been finding out a lot of new things. And I want to bring a lot of this to the platform. Now, with the rabbit holes, I also stumbled upon the Temptations as well. Now, please don't be confused. I've been a long time listener of both of who I've mentioned, but I'd be lying if I've said that I know every single thing about said artist or group, right? So upon finding out a lot of this new information, it's made me want to bring this content to the platform. So we're going to I can honestly say this is the first of maybe 4 to 6 pieces of content that we're going to bring to the platform on Michael. Who knows, if I stumble upon more, there'll be more than that. But that's what we're going to start with. So this is going to be, I would say, part one of maybe 4 or 5 part series. All right. So here we are. We're going to start with the description reads, the many beefs of Michael Jackson. All right. So yeah, let's get into it.
When you think about Michael Jackson, you probably think of a soft spoken, charitable, and kind artist. And while all of that may be true, what a lot of people don't realize is that he could be a little cutthroat, especially when it came to beefs and business, which inevitably led to him having some serious back and forths with his fellow artists, with some labeling him cold as ice. So join me today as we look into the many beefs of Michael Jackson. When Michael Jackson and Eminem beefed, it was pretty surprising. Not only because they're some of the biggest names in the music industry, but also because of the weird ways they went about taking shots at one another. M and Mike's relationship had its first road bump back in 2003. This is when M was in Glasgow for a show, where at his hotel with tons of paparazzi watching, he dangled and tossed around a baby doll out of his window.
I'm not gonna lie, I think this is corny as hell, right? The reason why I think it's real corny, it's almost like you ever heard of maybe a situation where a guy was trying to get with a girl, right? And maybe whatever ways he had of talking to this girl, they just they weren't working, right? He was falling flat, right? And then what he does is he then starts to throw smut, as we call it, on another guy's character, right? To try to gain cool points or whatever, or put himself in a better light to this said woman. I believe, to me, that analogy, it equates to what Eminem is doing here, in my opinion.
Without context, you're probably wondering, what does that have to do with Michael? Well, a few months earlier, MJ was in Berlin for an awards ceremony, and for whatever reason, he dangled his 8-month-old son out the window. Mike faced some obvious backlash for this terrible mistake, which led to him eventually apologizing, saying, "I got caught up in the excitement of the moment. I would never intentionally endanger the lives of my children." This is a weird thing to do regardless of excitement. Maybe he was just trying to show the kid off to the crowd. That could be it. I don't know. But what's important is that it was a pretty bad public moment for Michael, which he took a decent amount of criticism for. And that's why Eminem mocked him. So you could see how this would start a bit of a rift between Michael and M, who weren't even friends before any of this. But Eminem decided to take it a step further. In 2000,
see, that's the part that I don't agree with. He said it was weird, and this is why Eminem mocked him. But I don't believe that. It's like, that ain't justification for me. Not for the first of all, the industry that he was in. I don't know how deep Eminem was into his career at this point, but the industry you're trying to get in, you decide to disrespect the person that could possibly be respected to how high your career goes up, right? It's like, it just don't seem like a justification to me just because he did something that gives me the right to, oh, you opened up the window to be mocked and made fun of and ridiculed. I don't see how that correlates.
Eminem dropped the song Just Lose It as the lead single for his album Encore. Along with the song was a music video which had multiple scenes clearly mocking Michael. But it wasn't just the video that stirred things up, because when you look into the lyrics, M goes at Mike.
And what's corny is, in our reality, you still using this guy to bring attention to what you got going on. Like I said, with the analogy I used, right? Like, you still using this guy to, even in mocking him, or kind of like parodying his situation, you still using his name and likeness to bring attention to what you doing. So I think that's whack.
Wild subliminals. Early in the song's intro, M says, "Alright, stop, pajama time." This isn't just some MC Hammer pun. He's instead referring to the 2003 Michael Jackson documentary Living with Michael Jackson, in which Mike discussed letting kids sleep in his bed. And throughout the rest of Just Lose It, M continued to take more digs at Michael and his case, saying things like, "Guess who's back with a brand new rap?" And I don't mean rap as in a new case of child accusations. I done touched on everything but little boys, and that's not a stab at Michael. That's just a metaphor. I'm just a psycho. Obviously, the Michael Jackson allegations were a huge thing at the time, and while eventually he was found not guilty, Eminem making fun of this probably didn't make him feel so good. Apparently, Michael tried to get the song banned at first, but that didn't end up working, so he eventually spoke on how he felt about the bold jokes made at his expense.
I've never met Mr. Eminem, and
then he still gave him respect, right? Mr. Eminem, although, you know, his first name is Marshall, last name Mathers, so it would have been Mr. Mathers. But even in speaking, because Mike probably didn't even know his name he just know him by what they call him, which is Eminem. That's how much this dude was in his own world. He didn't really give a shit. But in addressing him, he still led with, formalities. And this dude was just real humble, man. He was humble. He was loving. He was caring. And I don't think that he deserved nowhere near the amount of hate and vile comments that were made towards him over the span of his career.
And to have him do something like that was pretty. I've never met Mr. Eminem, and to have him, I've always admired him, and to have him do something like that was
fucking whack
as an artist to another artist, and it's sad.
He said pretty painful.
I think what Stevie Wonder said is true, and I just don't want to say too much more than that. But he should be ashamed of himself, what he's doing.
What did Stevie say? What did Stevie say?
Another fellow artist.
Hold on. Let me see something real quick. Stevie Wonder's comments about Eminem and Michael Jackson. Stevie Wonder publicly criticized Eminem for disparaging Michael Jackson, particularly in the 2004 song Just Lose It, and called him a culture vulture for profiting from black culture while mocking its icons. Yo, that's crazy that Stevie said that. I didn't even know that till I just read that, because I literally just said that it's corny as shit because you're still making money right now off of disrespecting this dude. Like, you're profiting off of that. When it was disappointed that Eminem was kicking someone when they are down and suggested Eminem's success was hypocritical given his debt to the black community, while Wonder believed Eminem was a reasonable rapper, he stated he was not as good as Tupac. And see, that's what you do. When you ridicule, you open the door to be ridiculed. Wow.
Great artists don't do that. You don't have to do that.
Michael was clearly frustrated by the song, understand.
Correlates right back to what I said. You hear he said you don't have to do that, right? It's like, if you're gonna get the shorty, you're gonna get her. A great man will get a great woman. You ain't gotta talk down on somebody else just to, get her number and possibly take things further with her. You know what I mean?
So, and in response to Michael's frustration, Eminem was actually honored and explained the whole reason behind Just Lose It's creation.
Yeah, that wasn't intentional, but I'm just happy that Michael Jackson has heard of me.
That's the kind of cool side of it.
The fact that he's heard of me is that does me enough. But like the personal things, that was not planned. It was making no personal judgment on Michael Jackson.
This is bullshit. Sorry, YouTube. I think I'm past the time that I can curse. This is bullshit, right? Because how do you take a personal jab at this dude and didn't say it was making no personal judgment of Michael Jackson? How can you say that, bro? That's bullshit. I feel like he got a phone call. Because, what, bro? That's a complete contradiction to what you displayed.
It was not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was completely...
We don't know what you're saying.
All in Jack.
The beef up until this point was pretty one-sided, and after this, it went pretty silent. That was until in 2007 when things subtly reignited behind the scenes with Michael's Sony ATV publishing partnership. This group already owned a significant amount of projects for major artists, but then they secured Viacom's famous music catalog for $370 million, which included a lot of Eminem's back catalog. Some fans theorize that this was all a part of Michael's get back for Just Lose It. While the purchase of famous music included some famous names like Shakira, Eminem was considerably one of the most valuable, with hits like Without Me and The Real Slim Shady now being owned by Michael's publishing.
What's going on?
Partnership. A lot of people like to make it seem like Michael Jackson just kind of went out there and bought only Eminem's catalog, which was not the case. So even if the move wasn't meant as direct revenge, it's still a pretty funny and wild way to end the beef. And like I said, there is...
Now remember this part right here for later on in the video, right? Michael didn't cherry pick this catalog. In fact, he didn't buy the catalog specifically in general. He bought half of a company, right? So what comes with the company, that comes with the purchase, right? Like, so remember that later on down the line.
any concrete evidence that the purchase was made solely to spite M, but it has become a trend for Michael to buy the music of those he beefed with, because he did it again to Paul McCartney of the Beatles. Unlike with Eminem, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson actually started out as friends. In the early 70s, they first started working together, with Paul somewhat taking Mike under his wing. As the years went by, the two continued collaborating, eventually growing so close that Michael would stay with Paul and his wife while recording in London. In the early 80s,
he was part of the same Beatles, right? And listen, no disrespect to the Beatles, and I can't take away from their contribution to music, right? But he was part of the same Beatles that got famous covering a lot of our greats, right? A lot of our greats. I believe I was watching Cadillac Records, and it was a scene towards the end where Muddy Waters, who was also credited as one of the innovators of rock and roll, Muddy Waters, was introduced to some young kids from England, or I forgot exactly where they're from, and it ended up being the Beatles, right? So a lot of their inspiration they pulled from our greats, and a lot of the songs they did was covers of our greats. So yeah.
Recorded multiple songs together, including Say 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 and The Girl Is Mine, which is one of my personal favorites from the two, which both ended up going platinum.
Michael originally fancied writing some stuff with me, and I thought it was a good idea. So he came over here to England, and we just hung out for a little while and got to know each other a bit, and ended up writing 2 songs.
One night at dinner while Michael was living with Paul in London, the two started talking about publishing and song ownership. During this conversation, Paul took out a notebook which had a list of all of the songs he owned publishing rights to.
I said, you got to get a really good manager, because it's all going to be coming in and it could all go out if you don't. And I said, and you ought to think of getting into song publishing.
For a business, you ought to think about music publishing. It's because it's very good business. You love music. I'm into it. It does very well. It's a nice, easy business for a musician to be in. And it's a very rewarding business, because it's music, it's songs, beautiful songs.
He was trying to tell Michael that investing in music catalogs and publishing rights was the right thing to do. It was a smart investment. And Michael took this advice to heart, in the same conversation even insisting that he would buy Paul's music one day. However, as bold as it sounded, Michael wasn't joking, and it ended up being one of the best financial moves he ever made. At this time, Paul was pretty deep into the music publishing investment game. He owned a bunch of songs and catalogs. He learned this the hard way, though, after being almost forced to sell the rights to the Beatles music in the 60s. This was due to a tax problem in Britain at the time, and to avoid paying about 90% on their earnings. So to dodge this, he created Northern Songs Ltd. and later took the company public. While this was a smart move at the time, the decision ended up turning bad in 1969 when the Beatles publisher sold their shares of the company to Britain's Associated Television, also known as ATV. Sound familiar? None of the Beatles members or any other shareholders of Northern Songs were aware of this sale or even able to prevent it regardless. When they did eventually find out about it, counterbid attempts were made, but in the end failed, which means not only did they lose the majority of their company, but they also...
Hold up. You know what counterbids failing means? They didn't offer enough money. That's what that means. Okay? That means that they didn't offer enough money to the table, and they decided to decline. So that's why they didn't get their masters back, okay? Or publishing, should I say.
The publishing rights to their music. The whole ordeal ended up becoming an example in the industry of why you should never sell your music's publishing rights, a lesson which Michael learned a lot from himself. Throughout the next few years, Michael started buying up decent-sized catalogs across the industry, at first passing up on most...
First of all, what I will say, and I'm going to stop pausing, we're going to get through it, we're already at 18 minutes, but what I will say is, to even have the option to sell your publishing is already... and I hate using this word, I swear I do. But it's already a privileged position. A lot of artists don't have that right to sell their publishing because they don't own it to begin with. Right? Like, when you end up getting into these deals and these contracts you sign before you even record a lick of music, your publishing is owned by the company that you are signed to. So to even have that right to be able to say, oh, I'm in this much tax debt that to get out of it, I can sell my publishing and we'll be fine. That's already like, I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? Y'all, I'm going to explain my point in a minute.
Options presented to him, only buying music which he had an affection for. But when Michael's career really started taking off, he had a ton more money to play with, which led to him diving deeper into the publishing game. Eventually, in 1985, Michael's team approached him about the massive ATV catalog being up for sale, asking if he wanted to make an offer. Initially, he was only buying copyrights, but the
Now, it says in 1985, Jackson bought the ATV catalog, which included 251 Beatles songs, along with a few thousand others for $47.5 million. It proved to be Michael's most valuable asset, helping to finance a lavish lifestyle even as Jackson's own musical career reached a low point in the years before his death.
package came with a bunch more, including studios, equipment, and even life insurance policies, which was common for publishers to take out on their biggest artists, one of which was for Paul. Apparently, over the years, Paul had made some weak attempts to bid for ATV, but never anything worth considering. It's believed that Paul just really wanted his music and not the thousands of other songs and things that it came with. However, since the Beatles tracks...
You can't do that. You can't cherry pick. We selling this whole thing. You can't say, no, just give me mine or just give me those and I'll give you this much. It don't work like that. That's not... With Michael Michael quote, that's not good business.
Up a significant portion of the catalog's value, it was hard for ATV to agree to selling one without the other. And eventually, Michael decided to buy ATV Publishing for $47.5 million, which officially granted him ownership to thousands of songs, including 251 Beatles songs.
Okay.
When Paul became aware of this, he was pretty pissed off at Michael, and he said, "I think it's dodgy to do something like that. To be someone's friend and then buy the rug they're standing on." Michael alleged...
That's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's like textbook gaslighting, bro. Like, how you gonna be mad at me because I bought a company that just happened to own your catalog? Like, bro, how is that my fault? How is that my fault? You didn't own it. You didn't own it. And when they tried to sell it to you, you didn't want to buy it. You just wanted to buy your piece. So come on, man. Like, listen. So what you mean to tell me is, because somebody was gonna buy it, you was okay with somebody else buying it. That still wasn't gonna be you. But I couldn't buy it. Come on now. And listen, I speak so strongly about this because I've been thinking for the past couple of days before I even made this right here. I was thinking about this, like, yo, wait. How could you even have a problem with Michael over this? How? I don't even understand it. You got a better chance of buying just your piece from Michael than you do from anybody else that buy it, and damn sure from ATV, because they didn't want to sell it to you. So come on now.
He tried to call Paul many times to talk things out, but in his frustration, Paul hung up every time. As more time passed, Michael used the Beatles songs in numerous projects, profiting significantly off the publishing rights. In response, Paul reached out a bunch and tried to prevent this, arguing that the music...
So, let me get this right. Michael tried to call you, and you didn't answer, right? You didn't answer. But then, when your stuff was used, you tried to call Michael, and he didn't answer. That's what I'm hearing.
In response, Paul reached out a bunch and tried up every time. As more time passed, you to do something like that. To be someone's friend and then buy the rug they're standing on. Michael allegedly tried to call Paul many times to talk things out, but in his frustration, Paul hung up every time. As more time passed, Michael used the Beatles songs in numerous projects, profiting significantly off the publishing rights. In response, Paul reached out a bunch and tried to prevent this, arguing that the music being used in commercials and other things cheapened it. But Michael continued saying that,
it ain't yours, my man. I can do whatever I want. It ain't yours, bro.
make the music bigger and more people will hear it and give you more exposure. In 1990, Michael and Paul finally met to discuss their problems.
But I do intend to have a word with him. I spoke to him in LA, actually.
You did?
Yeah, and said, look, we've got to come to a good understanding here, because there are a number of things I don't like about how he runs the company.
We ain't got to come to a good understanding about shit. And Mike was being real humble and nice when he met with you to begin with, right? Because realistically, you only having this conversation with me because I'm your friend. Your friend that you've been ignoring for months, probably years, right? You only having this conversation with me because you can, because if you couldn't, you would have to sit back and just accept it, right? So it's even a privilege for you to be able to even have this conversation with me. There go that word again. I don't like how you only saying that because you know me personally, bro. Because if you didn't, you would have to just accept it. You would have to just sit back and say, damn, they using our song in that commercial again. Damn, we should have never sold it. We should have just paid them taxes. We should have just paid them taxes that we owed.
In our case, the trouble is, like the Nike thing that came up, I don't know if you heard about that, but the trouble is that we never did do commercials. With the Beatles, we had all those offers.
Paul said to Michael that he was basically tricked into selling his copyrights while he was young, and now he feels betrayed that his old friend is using this mistake to profit off his music. Michael was claiming that he didn't...
As somebody that studied the business for so long, I also don't agree with that stance, saying that you was tricked, right? You were tricked because, let me guess, and this is how the story always goes. You were naive. You weren't educated enough, especially being a young person when you got that deal. So you didn't read what you signed. And then not reading what I signed properly always equates to I was tricked or I was taken advantage of. And you weren't. You just didn't do good business.
Hurt anyone by doing this, and he was confused. Shortly after this, Paul's attorney reached out to Michael's team and stated that the two artists agreed that Paul's royalties for his music would be increased. However, when Michael's team asked him if this was true, Michael shot this down, saying they never agreed on it. And in response, Paul's team threatened to sue. Apparently, behind the scenes, Michael felt that Paul had many chances to buy his music back, but passed on them because he was too cheap. So now that he owns them and Paul has a problem with it, Michael believed he had no duty to make things right. Which, I don't know, from my perspective, look, I love Michael Jackson, he's dope, but that seems a little snaky, I'll be honest. Years later, in 2001, Paul said, so we haven't talked...
You know why it seems snaky? Because you're thinking of it from a personal standpoint, right? You thinking of it from... See, and that's the thing, man. It's really hard to do business with friends, right? Because while some people can, which Michael clearly could, make the distinction between the two, a lot of people can't. Right. So like you're looking at this from a lens of I'm supposed to be treating this on a personal level. But Michael was looking at it from a stance of this is business. Like, and this ain't just me. Just because I'm the fucking the cash cow, bro, I got staff to pay. It's so much. I got expenses. I'm running a business. I can't just do stuff out of the goodness of my heart, although he was a very, very sweet and kind person where he needed to be sweet and kind at, right? But wasn't nobody about to fuck him when it came to business. You heard me? Come on now.
Don't have that great a relationship. The trouble is I wrote those songs for nothing, and buying them back at these phenomenal sums, I just can't do it. To which Michael responded, oh, Paul, that's just business.
Phenomenal sums. So you even underestimated the wealth of your own craft. It's crazy.
Picturing him saying that in his voice. That's so funny. This sentiment continued for years as Paul held a reasonable resentment towards Michael. Eventually, when he tragically passed, Sony/ATV purchased the final shares in a deal with...
Don't say he held a reasonable resentment, bro, because now you it wasn't reasonable, bro. It wasn't reasonable. It was some bullshit that he was on. It's one of them things where it's like, damn, I could have got her first and I didn't. Sony buys out Michael Jackson's ATV music publishing for $750 million. I was kind of pissed off about this.
Michael's family worth $750 million. Since Michael's passing, Paul has expressed that he no longer holds much anger about the situation anymore. While he still believes his initial response was valid, there's obviously no point in pursuing it any further. And in the end, in 2018, Paul was able to start getting a bunch of his music.
That's crazy because when the music when they bought the music, he was no longer mad about it. But when his friend owned it, he treated him like shit and didn't want to talk to him, didn't want to come to a compromisation. Come on, bro. That sound like the snake shit to me. It's crazy how people's minds work different. We look at things and perceive things completely different. That's wild. What? Paul McCartney finally regains Beatles rights after near 50-year-long battle.
Back from Sony/ATV through some legal loopholes following a lawsuit and a private legal settlement. So at the end of the day, it's kind of crazy. Paul got his publishing rights back like half a century later. This feud was very public and very direct, but Michael's beef with Prince was a lot more subliminal and spurred on by fans. While Michael Jackson dominated the music game for years, it's hard to talk about pop in the 80s without bringing up Prince. Both artists contributed to the genre in major ways. Throughout their respective solo careers, the two artists rose in step with each other, growing in an almost parallel.
It's crazy to have a competition with Prince where I know Prince, like I know about him, right? I can't name not one Prince song to you. I think Purple Rain, and I know a lot of other people that are like that. I'm just saying, there's no competition, Prince, relax.
In some cases, they both even dropped projects at the exact same time. Although
R.I.P. to Prince, though, man. He was definitely an icon.
the release schedule and rise was pretty similar. The content of their character and music was pretty contrasted. One fan said about Prince, he was always more risque and always pushed boundaries. Prince is indirectly why there is a parental advisory label on music with profanity. And they continued on with Michael saying, Michael Jackson was a star as a child. He was a lead singer of one of the biggest acts in music during the 70s. Therefore, he basically has two careers, one as a child and one as an adult. Michael Jackson was probably the greater entertainer. Funny enough, the two were born in the same year, only months apart, and both grew up in the Midwest. Surprisingly though, with all of these parallels, the two didn't get along very well. They ran into each other for the first time at the 1983 New Year's Eve James Brown concert, a legend that both young stars looked up to. For context, around this time the media had already been heavily pitting the two against one another, and at this show, James inevitably invited Michael up on stage to perform some of his songs. But since Michael wasn't the only star in the room, Michael whispered in James' ear and dared him to invite Prince on stage. Prince accepted and performed with his own little bit of flair. This was the first and the last time that Michael and Prince ever shared a stage. And after watching, you probably think there's not much negative to point out, especially since Prince clearly had the crowd screaming, even if he didn't sing that much. But when you look at the details, a bunch of things actually went wrong. Apparently his guitar was malfunctioning, and when Prince attempted to swing on the prop light pole, the entire thing fell into the crowd. Again, this doesn't seem too bad, but since it was at a major event in front of his idol, you could see how it felt a bit embarrassing. To make matters worse, Michael, who invited him on stage, mocked Prince relentlessly for this performance. And as a result, according to Quincy Jones, Prince even attempted to run Michael over with his car after the show, which, if that's true, is crazy. Their beef intensified further when Prince declined an invite from Michael to appear on the recording of the We Are the World charity single. So in the following year, Quincy Jones attempted to end the beef by setting up a collaboration between Michael and Prince on the song Bad. However, Prince again decided to turn down the offer. After the fact, Prince decided to explain to Chris Rock why he did that.
Is the story of you turning down Bad?
Well, you know, that Wesley Snipes character, that would have been me. All right, now you run that video in your mind. The first line of that song is "Your butt is mine." Now I said, who's gonna sing that to whom? Cause you sure ain't singing it to me. And I sure ain't singing it to you.
Yeah.
So
in response to this and other sneak disses, Michael said in a later released audio,
I ain't gonna lie, I respect that. I respect Prince for that. You feel me? Like, he stood on principles, and I fucked with that. You know what I mean? Not saying Michael didn't, but yeah, I fuck with Prince.
recording for his 1988 Moonwalk memoir. I don't like
Ain't no competition though, Prince. Chill.
compared to Prince at all. I have proven myself since I was real little. He feels like he's my opponent. I hope he changes because, boy, he's gonna get hurt. He's the type that might commit suicide or something. Mike added on saying, he was so rude, one of the rudest people I've ever met. Prince is very competitive. He has been very mean and nasty to me and my family, which is one of the few direct confrontations of this beef. In the following years, the two continued to have little run-ins here and there, with Michael repeating his attempts to bury the hatchet and Prince also repeating his denials. It wasn't until Michael's death that Prince appeared to experience a change of heart. After hearing about Michael's passing, Prince allegedly canceled rehearsal and went home where he locked himself in his room for days. In further interviews, he spoke on this saying, "It's always sad to lose someone you loved. I don't want to talk about it. I'm too close to it." And in tribute, he even started performing a cover of Michael's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Then later in 2016, Prince also tragically died very young, with some of his close friends expressing sadness that the two stars, Michael Jackson and Prince, never...
He died 7 years after Michael. Yo, that's crazy. That is crazy, man. Singer and songwriter Prince has died aged 57. Who the fuck wrote this, man? It was BBC. Who the fuck wrote it? Oh, man. All right, y'all. That's going to be the end of this at the moment because we're running a bit over our time. I'm going to do a part 2 to this video here, and then we're going to move on to our next Michael video. All right. I hope y'all enjoy the content. Like, subscribe. Let us know, any other artists that you would like to see us go over this span of reactions. We're getting ready to finish out a lot of Michael. We're going to move into the Temptations, and let me know who should be next up. I'm thinking about Jackie Wilson. I have other people that I personally want to do, but, I'm doing this for you guys. So please, if you got any suggestions, just drop them down in the comment box below. All right. I'm host True Victor, and this is the Puny Humans platform. What's up with the walls up?
She think she the best. I'm trying to see what's up. She might be correct. Mommy on my top like a do-rag. Drinking barefoot like where your shoe at. I'm sipping my wet now. Her pussy get wet now. My reciprocate now. Pull up in the his and hers Bentley. You asked for the guys, so they sent me. Golden child gifted. Rockin' to the engine start season. I'm recording to the tennis, get evicted. I'm a motherfucking menace. Hot nigga with a cold heart. Hot niggas, it get all dark. On the block with it, where it all starts. She eating popsicles, knock it out the